All right, and we should be live, hopefully, if everything has worked out correctly. So, good evening or good day whenever you end up watching this.
Or wherever you are right now.
Wherever you are right now. I am Traben of Traben's Tomes. I do book reviews and reading sprints and productivity streams. And I'm joined by my wife.
I am Amanda of Amanda Should Be Reading. I am also a booktuber who is figuring out what to do with her really long review she made while the dishwasher was running. So, good times.
And we are here to do some reading sprints. So, got another 15 minutes we'll be chatting, and then we'll be starting up 45-minute sprints to read. I am currently working on getting through a bunch of my Fairy Loot books. So Fairy Loot is a subscription service. I am subscribed to their YA box. So every month I get a new young adult book. And I've been trying to read through my backlog. I got about 8 months behind last year. And so we did a couple of videos on setting up the reading order. And so now I'm reading The Girl with No Reflection. So these are very nice copies.
Fairy Loot does make very nice copies.
Yeah.
Whether you like the books is one thing, but they're always very nice.
Yeah. And so this is about a girl. So far, it's about a girl who her reflection is coming to life and menacing her. And she's about to get married to the prince. It's set in, if it's not set explicitly in China, it's set in a very Chinese influenced setting, I would say. As far as the culture, I do believe there was a note at the beginning to not take this as historical fact or culturally accurate. But I will say it got to the setup really quickly. That did grab my attention, so I'm hoping to put a decent dent in this one tonight. So, what are you reading?
I'm currently reading 2 books. Still haven't finished my Kitaro graphic novel. I'm about here, I think, so a little under halfway. This I'll be able to get through quick. I'll probably finish it first because there isn't that much left. The only thing I'm upset about is I don't know why Drawn and Quarterly is allergic to printing these stories chronologically.
Okay.
They just seem to print them whatever. If you look at the table of contents, you get stories from 1967, 1978, then 1967 again.
So it's not only weird that they're not doing it chronologically, but that they're letting you know, hey, we took these from completely different years. They didn't have to tell you that.
And I kind of get this because I think they're trying to group them because these last 2 are from January of 1968 and then December of. Oh no, this is 1966. This one came before this. No, this is insane. These both feature one of the same yokai, but they're presented in reverse order.
Okay.
So I don't understand why they're presenting them in this order. It feels strange, and I wish they'd just present it either in a very curated way that they explained why the stories were in a certain order, or just present it in the original order.
Yeah. Well, and I know Kitaro has a very long history, right? There's an anime series. We were just looking the other night.
Yeah.
There's an anime series from 20...
18?
18? Yeah.
They make a new anime series pretty much every decade.
Okay.
Which I think is really cool because they've taken some of these same source material stories, but adapted them every decade to be slightly more relevant to the times. So I know there's one in the newest Kitaro that deals with cell phones. And I don't remember what exactly the yokai is. But whatever the yokai is was not originally associated with technology or cell phones. I think it's something to do with vanity or something, or concentration or focus. I don't know. But they put that into cell phones, and that's how the yokai is manipulating people. And I thought that was really clever.
Yeah.
So I honestly think probably the more recent the adaptations, the better, because they've really refined. They've adapted this a lot of times and have really been able to get to the meat of the stories. But I am really interested in the originals. I love yokai, so Then I'm still working my way through Watching TV with a Linguist. I'm on the second chapter, which is much easier to read than the first. It's written much more conversationally.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how far I wanted to go into this one.
So is it by the same author? Because I know like the
No.
intro was like the really dense intro. Isn't that from the editor, who's
Yes.
also like the writer of several of them?
Yes, but her first chapter is like chapter 5.
Okay.
And that has a co-author. So I'm hoping that either... Yeah, her first chapter is... Oh, no, chapter 4. So, but I am hoping that maybe it reads more conversationally, because the first chapter just felt like a literature review, which are dry, because it's just, here's all the research on this topic that's already been done.
Right.
Here's the reason TV should be taken seriously.
Uh-huh.
So I could see that being very dry, but then when you're looking more into a particular research project, it being more conversational. We'll see. The second chapter is much better in terms of readability, I feel.
Yeah, what I like about this is it really does cross between your focus and my focus.
It really does.
Which is, my minor was in film studies in college. And so, like, while you were reading me that first chapter, I was like, yeah, this is really dense. This is really complicated. But, like, also I kind of miss it.
Yeah,
like,
right?
I kind of miss reading those really dense, not like textbooks, but like academically focused books on something that you like are knowledgeable of. Like you have the expertise and the technical know-how to get the jargon and to dive deeper in the subject. And I kind of miss that because I've not been reading a lot of
challenging.
I've not been reading a lot of nonfiction anyway, and the nonfiction I have been reading has been very approachable, like Sam Keane and Mary Roach.
Yeah.
Who write in this like they take like very silly concepts and look at them. And
it's for a layman. It's for someone who has no experience with the topic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this one wants to be approachable, whether you're a TV watcher who has no background in linguistics or a linguist who's never considered TV before. But like that first chapter, man.
Yeah.
That was really, I don't know that if you don't have a background in linguistics, you're going to make it through that chapter.
That's a lot of ground to cover if you're not familiar with linguistic concepts at all.
And the first chapter, I felt like it wanted to say things about discourse, but it was just using Sherlock as examples. It wasn't really about Sherlock.
Okay.
Where this second chapter is about The Wire. It's going to explain the linguistics of The Wire, but the linguistics, the Wire comes first. The Wire is the center of the explanation. Like, the Sherlock chapter didn't get to a transcript from Sherlock till page 7.
Okay.
The Wire one had one in like the second paragraph.
Yeah.
To immediately show you this is what we're looking at.
Okay.
So I feel like the first one was just like, here's all these ideas about discourse in television, and I'm going to use Sherlock as this example to show you how Sherlock breaks these discourse things to build his own to build his character. But we were mostly focused on the linguistics with this Sherlock sprinkled in. Whereas this second chapter is about The Wire.
Okay.
It couldn't be about anything else. And I'm liking that a lot better. And then I also grabbed this one off the shelf just in case this gets too heavy for me. I feel like I just watched a video. It might have been Jack Edwards reviewing this book. I mean, he does a thing every year where he does like every book he read, a review in like one sentence.
Right.
And I think this was on there, and he said it was a book he felt you should read if you're coming out of a reading slump. Because... And maybe only if you're coming out of a reading slump. So I don't think he was super impressed, but he did feel it was decent.
Okay.
And I am kind of struggling because I didn't like the last book I read very much. I don't think I'm fully in a slump, but I am struggling to get back into the reading. So I thought this one might be a good, fast-paced little suspense book that I keep hearing about, but know almost nothing about.
Yeah.
And it's short, so that helps too.
Yeah. I feel like I'm also in a slump in that, like, yesterday, I think was the first day that I didn't do any reading at all. Like,
Of the whole year?
Yeah, of this year.
I can't believe you made it 40-something days.
I didn't listen to an audiobook. I might have listened to an audiobook on the way to work. That I can't remember. But I did not read all day because we were doing the blind date with a book with my students.
Oh, so you only talked about books all day, but you didn't actually read any?
Yeah.
Shameful.
Yeah.
This is how you ended up reading 365 books that 1 year, 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my goal is still 200, so. But yeah, and the other thing is, like, I've just been reading just Fairy Loot book after Fairy Loot book, and while it's not like...
Are you getting burnt out on the genre?
Yeah, and it's not a genre necessarily, because they do have like different things. There was some romance, and there was some like with lighter fantasy elements. There's like heavier fantasy. There was like urban fantasy.
So they don't all feel the same, at least.
But no, but that's the thing. Like, even though they have like different genres, like they're all still YA, which I know is like a marketing thing and not a genre thing. But
well, but it is kind of both now, because I think some writers are writing with YA in mind.
Uh-huh.
They're writing with that marketing ploy in mind.
Yeah.
Not all of them, obviously, but some of them. So,
and they do. I've mentioned this in my wrap up, which I haven't edited yet, but I talk about how I feel like the veneer, like the unimportant things, like the setting and stuff like that, is a much bigger indicator for me if I'm going to enjoy one of these books.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they all feel like, even the one I enjoyed the most, I think, so far has been the
urban fantasy one.
Yeah, it's been Darker by 4, which was like urban fantasy and also set in like used Chinese mythology. Felt very much like Bleach, like early.
That's right.
Like late 90s, early 2000s anime, which for us was like peak anime, because everything when you were a teen, that was when everything was at the best, right?
I mean, for music, I don't know about anime.
I don't. Yeah, but anyway, so like I know objectively it was doing all the same things that frustrate me about all these other books, but I liked the world building and I liked the elements of it. It had a fun kind of mystery element to it too, although it wasn't really like, you didn't have a whole lot of suspects. There weren't a whole bunch of characters, and then the romance was more. Like, all of them have romance, and this one, the romance was a little bit more tolerable because they had known each other for a long time.
So it wasn't insta-love?
Yeah. Like, it was like they antagonize each other, and so I don't think the POV character, I don't think, was expecting to, like, fall in love with him, but I think that it was one of those things where it's just like, it was obviously there. And again, it's more tolerable because they already had an established relationship.
Yeah.
So
it wasn't just out of nowhere, and the first thing they said about the other person wasn't how hot they were.
Yeah, it wasn't because they were just like messing with each other. This one, she's in a like forced arranged marriage, and I'm wondering if it's going to be one of these where it's like she finds out that he really has, like, he's not really a bad guy, he just has like a tortured past, and like that's why he's like a terrible, that's why he seems like a terrible person. Or if it's going to be like, oh, she falls in love with some other person. Given the like iconography, I was just looking at the mirror that came with the box, and given that, I'm pretty sure they're gonna eventually fall in love. So she's gonna find out something about him that like excuses his like aloof behavior.
That reminds me of, there was an anime I watched most of, I never finished it, I need to do that, called My Happy Marriage, where a girl ends up in a forced arranged marriage with this guy who like has kicked out all of his previous fiancés and like has this reputation of being cold and aloof and horrible, and she's just happy to be out of her abusive family home. So she's just like, this is great, I will do whatever to stay here because I don't want to go back there. And he's not horrible at all. He just hated all the women who were trying to like use him. Yeah. And so they end up falling in love with each other because she's trying so hard to like win him over, and he's realizing that like she came from a horrible situation. Yeah.
The Darkness Within did this as well. It's like a Beauty and the Beast.
Which one is The Darkness Within?
It's the first one I read. The one where
My husband is taking too long to die.
And it's like a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and so the reason why he's like firing everybody and trying to push everybody away is because he's got like a monster, a demon inside him, and so he's pushing people away to try to protect them.
Of course.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess if you turn into a giant beast, like, that is actually something that might be good if you're going to actually maul them to death.
Yeah. So something to consider. But yeah, it's just like there's not a whole lot of range with the relationships. Like even with what we were talking about, like some of them start with like enemies to lovers, and some are friends, but it's not like it's almost always like first love. And yeah. So all right, as our timer indicates, let's do this. We're going to do this this way. So we're going to get started on our reading sprints. Let me pull up our other timer, and then we'll get our stuff done. So let me see here. All right. All right, now we should be back on. So, yeah, everything should be set. Alrighty. I hope everybody's reading was good. I got farther than I thought I would, so that's good. It's reading very quickly. So I'm on page 80. I think I started somewhere on page like 30 something. So.
Oh, and you got that far with me blathering at you. That's good.
It wasn't that bad. Yeah, I got from page 32 to page 81. So for 45 minutes, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So she's now been dragged into, well, not dragged into. She was pulled into the mirror world, and now we're exploring the mirror world. Her reflection claims that she is hurt and needs to get out of the mirror dimension for a while, in order to heal. And so, yeah.
That sounds like what a reflection would say, to trade places with you.
Yeah.
I've seen an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark like this, I'm sure.
Yeah. So please feel free to put in the comments, what are you reading? What are you spending our reading sprints doing? How did yours go?
I finished Kitaro. It's so funny, like, you'll get to the end of a story and it'll have things like, let me find one of them that was just so funny. It'll have like this entire box that's just text that tells you what happened.
Okay.
So like, he gets in the fight with the bad guy, they save everyone and they decide they're going to an island. And then it says, when Umezato tried to swallow Kitaro's soul, Kitaro bit his Adam's apple and sucked it into his mouth like a vacuum, which is what happened. Umezato's power drained away and he lost his army of Funayori, so Kitaro was able to easily defeat him. Soon a rescue ship came for them all.
Yeah. This strikes me as like early in any new media, you are unsure what the competence of your readership is.
It doesn't even feel like that. It feels like he ran out of pages. And so he had to put, because these were all published in other magazines.
Okay.
So it feels like he ran out of room and had to just put a panel in explaining what he didn't show you to be sure that he explained what happened, because it wasn't clear.
Okay.
But he does it sometimes within the comic too, when it's like exposition. Instead of wasting several panels setting this up, he just tells you what happened.
Yeah.
But it's always really funny when it comes at the end of a chapter, because it'll just be like, Kitaro's power did this, and then they left, and you're like, wait, what?
But you don't think this is like early cinema with its like really long takes and things like that?
Some of them might be, but like, it usually feels like it's explaining something that happened that was not explained at all.
Yeah. And
like this one says, with Kitaro helpless after the vicious attack, Sarakoza leaps into feast, but he forgets about Nozomi Otoko. Standing windward, Nozomi Otoko releases his robe into the breeze. The stench of his filthy robe acts like knockout gas. Sarakoza reels, wobbly from the smell. Senseless, he starts to babble. He hasn't been hit this hard in over 250 years. And then it goes back into the comic. So it's just like, we had this part where he goes in to attack Kitaro, and then he gets hit by Nozomi Otoko's thing, and then it explains it again.
Yeah, that strikes me as the thing of like,
that one is.
Yeah.
But when it comes at the end, and it's just like, this is what happened. It's so weird.
And so then you picked up your language book?
Yeah, I just reread what I'd already read of chapter 1, which is the first little intro section. It talks about how The Wire is a very interesting look because it's written by a Baltimorean. It stars predominantly Baltimoreans. Apparently, like, most of the extras were native Baltimoreans, so they wanted to really get the language authentic.
Okay.
And a Baltimore accent can be very impenetrable for outsiders.
Okay. I can see that.
And so it does not hold your hand. It took 0 attempts to lessen anyone's accent. They really wanted to be authentic to Baltimore. So I think that's really interesting to be able to take that place and really show the language identity of it.
Mm-hmm.
It did mention that 2 of the actors are actually English.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they speak in interviews, they have noticeably English accents. So the study in this volume does not concern any of their dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know sometimes things get changed on set. So they probably wanted to keep it to, since you're not dealing with scripts, you're dealing with the actual show.
Mm-hmm.
They probably wanted to keep it to the language that they could measure. And they didn't want to include anything that might have been changed.
Okay.
From someone who isn't from the area.
Mm-hmm.
Or to be like, oh, isn't it interesting how here we're violating it? Oh, but wait, this actor isn't from here, so maybe it doesn't count. Yeah. So they just excluded those 2 characters from the study, unless it said that the language is non-controversial. So if it fits everything you would expect from a Baltimore dialect,
mm-hmm.
then they'll consider it. If he breaks the conventions of a Baltimore dialect, it's not going to consider it because he isn't from Baltimore.
Yeah, so it's unclear if it's a actor slip or if it's like yeah. I can see that for sure.
Which makes sense in terms of when you have so much source
mm-hmm.
that you can pull from. This show was on, what did I say, for like 6 years. They have so much they can look at from Baltimoreans, delivered by Baltimoreans. You don't really need to include every character in your study to look at the language identity of Baltimore shown in the show.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen The Wire at all. I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever seen a single episode. It was on HBO, and I figured out it was while I was in high school and college,
mm-hmm.
and we definitely didn't have HBO in college.
No.
So, and I was busy in high school. We had HBO, but I don't think we weren't really watching a lot of HBO.
Yeah, HBO is one of like the premium channels.
Yeah, it points out that their slogan was, "It's not TV, it's HBO." Mm-hmm. And I know we had it, but I don't, it was one of those that like we watched movies on because HBO ran movies without commercials.
Mm-hmm.
And that was exciting because you didn't have to sit through commercial breaks.
Yeah.
But I don't think we watched.
Well, I think that's his original premise, right? It's home box office.
Home box office, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the draw.
Yeah.
And then they started making shows like The Sopranos and The Wire and these really high quality, high budget TV shows mm-hmm. that were not like the shows you would find on TV. Mm-hmm. So they tried to elevate themselves, and I think they still do, mm-hmm. with like Game of Thrones and these high budget, high concept shows. Mm-hmm. So I reread what I'd read, which is mostly just the introduction that lays out what makes The Wire kind of unique. Okay. I really enjoyed the first example they give, which is someone. It's a young man who is he a drug dealer, a low-level drug dealer on a street corner. He says, "Yeah, so we was out on Carlton, this old white man, and his wife roll up, and he's like, 'Young man, you know where the Poe House is?' I'm like, 'Unc, you kidding? Look around, take your pick.' So the old man, he's like, 'The Poe House, the Edward Allan Poe House.' I'm like, 'I don't know no Edward Allan Poe.' The man looks at me all sad, like I let him down." And that it talks about how that only works because with knowledge of how African American vernacular English works, mm-hmm. that Poe sounds like the word poor when pronounced in African American vernacular English. Mm-hmm. And so that joke only works if you know how that's pronounced. Yeah. It wouldn't work in Texas.
Yeah. Because
you would still say the poor house. It would not sound like Poe as in Edgar Allan Poe.
Right. Okay.
So that joke would not work mm-hmm. universally.
Right.
It works in a very specific regional area where the word is pronounced that way. But more than that, it's not just a regional thing. It's also a sociolinguistic thing because it is, in this case, African American vernacular English, which is an identifier of race. Mm-hmm. So I think the next chapter deals with regional, like specifically like regional dialects, mm-hmm. but this one is looking at both regional and like social markers of like class.
Okay.
So one of the things it's talking about is Ave in terms of like how it's identifying who you are.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool. I really like the chapter. It reads really easy. It makes me want to watch The Wire.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on in my book. Like it's she's at the point where it's really unclear if like her reflection is lying to her, if she is.
Is it like a doppelganger?
So they're trying to explain the rules of like Reflection Land. They all feel like glass. They're like compelled to mimic the actions of people from the real world.
Interesting.
When they're in front of mirrors. So there's like she describes like a glassy look, like a far off look on the person's face as they're like going around and doing like the maid's chores. And her reflection claims that because of this thing that happened to her when she was like 4 years old, where she fell into the river into a pond because someone was attacking her, and like there was a mysterious woman who saved the actual person, but there wasn't a mirror version of that person, so her reflection was underwater for like a considerably longer amount of time before someone came and rescued her.
Okay.
That she is like damaged, and because she's a creature of light and there's no real light in the reflection world, she's claiming that she has to get out into the real world and like be in the sun in order to like heal her body, and then they can switch back. That's the claim.
Yeah, that sounds dangerous. Why is it reminding me of the Are You Afraid of the Dark episode with the lizard? Did you watch that one with Tia and Tamara?
Yes. Yeah, I watched a lot of Are You Afraid of the Dark.
Bite me once, bite me twice, a little water, pay the price?
Yeah, because it's got the whole it's got the whole doppelganger aspect to it.
And that one ends with them switched.
Yeah.
And no one knows. Because you think they've done it right. You think they've switched back. And they like drop the lizard into the well. And then the evil one comes back and she's like, oh, don't worry, I'll feed you from time to time. Ha 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 ha. And you're like, oh no, it's the wrong one.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do recall that episode.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she did just get attacked by a giant snake.
In the mirror world?
Yeah, it came out of a pond in the mirror world, and it was like huge. And she got on top of it and was like grabbing behind its neck because she knows like the Yoink Man. Yoink,
yoink.
You gotta get right behind their head.
So they can't
she
bite
was
you.
like having to like straddle this giant snake and like press down on its head, but now it's like slithering back into the water and dragging her with it. So that's like where the chapter ended. The chapters are decently paced. I feel like they're shorter and they always end on like some sort of like moment. So. But yeah, there's so many questions. Everybody in Mirror World seems like also personality the opposite. So like the prince is really nice.
Oh, okay.
And like her friend was like really angry with her and like seemed really mean. So I feel like I'm getting that vibe of like mirror personalities are also mirrored.
Like Star Trek Mirrorverse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where everyone good is evil and everyone evil is good.
Yeah, some friends become enemies. Some
enemies become friends.
So yeah, it's a lot of right now. It's kind of a wait and see of like what's really going on, because I think that characters have ulterior motives, and like I don't feel like her reflection is just gonna be like, oh yeah, let's switch back, and then like where's the conflict?
Well, I guess there could be someone else with reasons to try to keep her there.
Yeah, that's true.
Like her mirror self could be telling the truth, but other people complicate things. But I feel like we've been conditioned not to trust reflections.
Yeah, mirror dimensions, inherently evil.
It would be more interesting if you could trust her.
Mm-hmm. Well, and of course, because the regular prince is a jerk to her, mirror prince is a nice guy, but is also still beautiful. So she wasn't making eyes at the actual prince, but she's making eyes at the mirror prince. There was also a point where she got stuck in a part of the world where like she couldn't escape. She kept trying to get out of this garden, and she just kept going back to that garden. So it seemed like there wasn't anything outside of like an immediate area for her, because she's like a foreign force in this world. So it remains to be seen. Hopefully I'll have more answers after the next sprint, which will be our last sprint because
Our camera does not have much battery.
we're working on it. But right now, yes, it is not going to last that long. All right.
So we'll see you again in 45 minutes.
Yep.